Title: 4 True Fishing Horror Stories That'll Make You Never Go Near Water Again. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. Story 1: The Lake Woman. My brother JJ and I used to fish at a secluded lake just outside our small town. It wasn't on any tourist map, just a stretch of still, black water hidden behind a wall of pine trees and thick brush. You had to hike nearly a mile through the woods to reach it, which was part of the appeal. It felt like our secret place. We'd go there most Friday nights after school. While other kids were at parties, we'd grab our rods, a lantern, and a small cooler and hike out just before sunset. The water always looked calm then, the surface turning gold in the fading light. I used to say it was peaceful, until the night that changed how I see lakes forever. That evening had started like every other. We set up on the same cluster of rocks near the north edge. The crickets were loud, the water glass still. I remember casting my line and watching the ripples fade when JJ suddenly stopped talking mid-sentence. "Do you see that?" he asked. Across the lake, maybe 60 yards away, the surface was moving, rippling in a slow, circular pattern, like something large was pushing upward from below. We thought maybe a fish or a deer had fallen in. But then something began to rise out of the water. At first it looked like a shadow, then clearer, the shape of a person. She emerged to her shoulders, long brown hair clinging to her face, her head tilted slightly to one side as if she were listening. I remember whispering that maybe she was swimming, but JJ reminded me the water was near freezing that time of year. She stood there silently, half submerged, just watching us. The air felt heavy, cold enough to sting when I breathed. JJ muttered that we should leave, but neither of us moved. It was like something in the stillness kept us frozen. Then she smiled. Not a friendly smile, more like someone pretending they'd forgotten how. Her lips barely moved, but I heard her voice echo across the water. "Come swim." JJ shouted that the water was too cold. She tilted her head again, almost curious, and then without warning she vanished beneath the surface. The water folded over her like a mirror closing. We waited for her to resurface, but she never did. After a full minute, JJ pulled out his phone and started a timer. 2 minutes passed. Then 3. Then the ripples appeared again, this time closer, maybe 20 yards out, coming straight toward us. That was enough. We dropped our gear and ran. I didn't look back until we hit the treeline, but when I did, I saw the water churning right where we'd been sitting. No one ever believed us, not even when we went back the next morning and found our cooler half buried in the mud, still closed, but wet, like it had been dragged to shore. I never fished that lake again. Sometimes, though, when I pass by on the highway and see that same dark patch of trees, I swear I can smell the water, cold, metallic, and waiting. Story 2: The Marsh Incident. It happened about 2 months ago in the marshes outside southern Louisiana. My friend Angel and I had gone out early that morning to catch speckled trout. We'd been fishing together for years, and that swampy stretch of water had always been our go-to spot, quiet, shallow, and alive with fish. We were in my 2-person kayak, the kind barely wide enough for comfort. The fog was thick that day, drifting just above the surface like it didn't want to leave. For the first hour, everything felt normal. Angel was joking, the air smelled like salt and moss, and we had the kind of silence that only comes from being miles away from anyone else. Around mid-morning, Angel hooked something decent. He leaned over too far trying to reel it in, and his phone slid right out of his jacket pocket into the muddy water. He swore loudly, saying the insurance wouldn't cover a lost device, only damaged ones. We tried using the paddles to feel around for it, but the bottom was nothing but soft mud and weeds. Finally, Angel said he'd go in after it. I told him he was crazy, the water was freezing, but he'd already pulled off his shoes and waded in. The marsh only came up to his waist, maybe 4.5 feet deep, and he started feeling around with his feet for anything solid. A few minutes passed, then I heard him yell. He disappeared, completely, like something had grabbed him. I thought maybe he slipped. I was halfway out of the kayak when he burst back up, gasping and clawing at the side. His arms were shaking, and he was covered in dark mud. He screamed, "Get out of here!" I helped pull him in, and we paddled away so fast the kayak almost tipped. I kept asking what happened, but he wouldn't speak until we were a good distance away. Finally, he said, "Something grabbed me." I asked what he meant. He said it felt like a hand, but not a hand. It was round, smooth, but strong, like a rope tightening around his ankle. He said it tried to pull him deeper into the marsh, dragging him away from the kayak. He kicked and fought until it let go. We argued for a while about what it could have been. A fish, an eel, a turtle maybe, but I'd never seen anything in those waters that could pull down a grown man. When we finally reached the launch, he looked pale. He didn't even bother drying off, just threw the gear in the truck and sat in silence. That night he sent me a text. "Don't go back there. I saw something under the surface before it grabbed me." I asked what he saw. He only replied, "Human eyes." We've never gone back. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear him thrashing in that cold black water, and something moving just beneath. Story 3, The Reservoir Stranger. It was supposed to be another quiet Saturday night with friends. Just a few drinks, some fishing, and music by the water. The spot was a small reservoir behind my friend Megan's neighborhood, hidden by woods and fenced off with no trespassing signs. We'd been there dozens of times, always through the same hole in the fence she'd cut years ago. There were 4 of us that night: me, Nick, Kat, and Megan. By the time we reached the water, the sun was setting, painting the trees orange and the water glassy and dark. Nick and I unpacked our rods while the girls spread out a blanket and turned on a small speaker. It felt peaceful, the kind of night where nothing bad should happen. Then Kat pointed down the shoreline. "Do you see that canoe?" she asked. A small canoe was wedged in the reeds about 50 feet away. It looked abandoned, drifting lightly with each ripple. Nick and I decided to check it out. As we got closer, the air felt heavier, like the wind had stopped moving. The canoe wasn't empty. Inside was a half-eaten sandwich, an open tackle box, and a phone lying face up on the seat with its flashlight still on. I remember saying, "Who leaves their phone behind?" Nick didn't answer. He just stared at the light flickering across the water, his face pale. It didn't make sense. Someone had clearly been there only minutes ago. But where were they? We scanned the area. No footprints, no sign of anyone leaving. Just silence. We hurried back to the others and told them what we'd found. As I spoke, I kept glancing toward the canoe, half expecting someone to appear and claim it. That's when Megan gasped and pointed across the reservoir. There was a person standing knee-deep in the water on the far side, motionless, facing us. The fading sunlight hit them just enough to make their outline visible. They were holding something long, like a fishing rod or a stick, but it hung limp at their side. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They just stared. A chill ran through me as I realized they might have been watching us the whole time. Then, without warning, the figure shouted, "Get out!" The voice echoed across the water, raw and angry. We froze for a moment, then grabbed our stuff. As we started walking back toward the fence, the person screamed again, louder this time, a sound between rage and panic. When I turned for one last look, I saw them drop whatever they were holding and start swimming toward us. We ran. None of us spoke until we made it back to the car. For 20 minutes, we just sat in Megan's driveway, staring at each other, trying to understand what had happened. The police couldn't help, we weren't supposed to be there anyway. I've never gone back. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still hear that voice, echoing over still water, warning us to leave before it was too late. Story 4, The Frozen Dock. I grew up in northern Minnesota, a place where winter doesn't visit, it takes over. By December, every lake turns to glass, frozen so thick you can park a truck on it. People here treat ice fishing like religion. My father did. His father did. And I did too. But one February night on Lake Harrow changed that for me forever. It was a Friday evening, just after sunset. The air was sharp enough to sting your lungs. You could hear every breath like it echoed inside your chest. My best friend Paul and I had decided to stay late. We were chasing one last catch before the weekend storm rolled in. Lake Harrow was remote, surrounded by dark pine and birch that stayed eerily still at night. Locals said the lake had bad ice. Not thin, just bad. Like something about it wasn't right. There were stories, old ones, about fishermen who fell through despite the ice being 3 feet thick, about people hearing voices beneath the surface when the wind went quiet. We laughed those off back then. Until that night. By 8 p.m., the sky was a blanket of black, the stars faint through the snow clouds. We drilled 3 holes into the ice earlier that afternoon, just enough to keep us busy. Our lantern glowed soft yellow, casting long shadows across the snow. The only sounds were the occasional creak of the ice and the whine of wind slipping through the trees. Then Paul froze mid-sentence. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. At first, I didn't. Then it came again, soft, rhythmic, almost polite. It wasn't random. It was steady, deliberate, and it was coming from beneath the ice. We leaned over one of the holes, flashlights shining into the water below. The beam cut through blackness until it caught something pale, 2 small, circular shapes just beneath the surface. Eyes. Human eyes. I recoiled so fast my flashlight slipped from my hand and clattered onto the ice. Paul's breath came out in foggy bursts as he whispered, "There's someone under there." But that couldn't be possible. The ice was at least 2 feet thick. Before either of us could move, a loud thud came from beneath us, like a heavy palm slapping the underside of the ice. Then another. Paul backed away, stumbling. The lantern tipped, spilling orange light across the ice before sputtering out. The world around us went completely dark except for the narrow beam of my flashlight. That's when I saw it, movement under the ice, tracing the path between our drilled holes. It was fast, like something swimming directly beneath us. Paul shouted, "It's coming this way." We ran, snatching up what we could, tackle box, thermos, nothing else. The sound followed us. The tapping had turned into scraping, long, dragging streaks beneath the ice, keeping pace with our boots. Halfway back to shore, the noise stopped. Silence. Even the wind seemed to die. Then a single crack split the air. The ice gave a long, low groan, followed by another sound, something breathing. Not loud, not human, just slow and wet, echoing up through the frozen lake. Paul dropped his rod. It slid several feet across the ice and stopped, or at least it should have. Instead, it started moving again, inch by inch toward a dark patch about 20 yards away. "Leave it!" I yelled, but Paul stepped forward anyway. He only got 3 steps before the dark patch in the ice caved in with a deep, sickening whump. He froze, and then we both saw them. Fingers. Pale, bluish fingers curling up from the hole's edge. They gripped the ice, flexing, and then vanished below. Paul didn't speak, he just ran. I followed, too scared to breathe. We reached the dock and collapsed against the wood, lungs burning in the freezing air. The lake behind us had gone silent again, as if nothing had happened. We didn't go back that night. But the next morning, curiosity got the better of us. We returned just after sunrise, this time with a local ranger. The storm hadn't hit yet. The lake looked calm and empty, sunlight glinting across a smooth, unbroken surface. No holes, no cracks, not even footprints where we'd run. It was like the night had erased itself. Paul tried to explain what we'd seen, the eyes, the fingers, but the ranger just shook his head. "Ice plays tricks," he said. "You hear things, see things. It's the cold." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I couldn't. Because that night, I found something in my truck that shouldn't have been there. Wedged in the side pocket was Paul's fishing rod, the one that had been pulled toward the hole. The handle was soaking wet, the metal reel coated in a thin sheet of frost, even though the truck had been parked in a heated garage all night. I didn't sleep. Neither did Paul. For weeks after, he swore he could hear tapping when the temperature dropped below freezing, faint at first, then louder, like it was beneath his floor. 2 months later, spring came early and Lake Harrow thawed. A few locals reported seeing something strange near the east end of the lake, a single wooden dock post that had collapsed inward, as if something had pushed up from below. No one investigated. No one fishes there anymore. Sometimes, when I drive past the frozen lakes that dot Minnesota's backroads, I think about that night. About the eyes beneath the ice. About the tapping that followed us. And every winter, when the lakes freeze again, I can still hear Paul's voice on the phone. quiet and shaking, saying, "It's back. I heard it again last night." Now, I don't even go near frozen water, because out there, in the silence of those endless northern nights, you never really know what's waiting beneath the ice, or who's still trying to get out.